I'm sorry to say, but she has passed away. I had been prepared for this from the moment she was born. However, when the time for farewell actually arrived, it became painful emotionally. Just yesterday we were talking, and she was smiling at me. My daughter Sarah was diagnosed with childhood leukemia soon after she was born, and had been undergoing treatment ever since. Despite all efforts, we could not cure her. Today, she passed away. She was 3 years old. Doctor, thank you so much for everything. You really did everything possible to treat my daughter. I am truly, truly grateful. From the moment the doctor knew about my daughter's leukemia, he worked tirelessly to treat her. He never gave up hope that she might be cured, working desperately on her treatment. Initially, the doctor had informed us that it was a disease with a high mortality rate, and that she might pass away. Yet, her departure still came too soon. I cried loudly next to my daughter's body. Later, her body was placed in a coffin and sent to my parents' house. My in-laws and my own parents, who had come to the house because of my daughter's death, all cried as they looked at her coffin. I think Sarah had a hard time since she was born, but she fought hard, didn't she? Normally, she could have passed away even earlier, right? Yes, the doctor said it was tough finding a donor, and she might not make it past 3 years. Is that so? Then, she lived quite long, didn't she? Amid the somber atmosphere with all the relatives gathered, two people began a conversation that seemed to shatter the mournful mood. Long time no see, Howard. How have you been lately? I was worried since I haven't seen your face. Oh, Alyssa? Is that so? I thought I've been showing up at my parents' place quite often. What's with the sudden catch-up? Hey, don't start such conversations now. Do it later. These two had been chatting loudly and sometimes laughed out loud since the viewing. It was unavoidable given they had known each other since high school. But their overly familiar behavior was striking. In front of me. And the next day, as we arrived at the funeral hall and were arranging the funeral, these two were nowhere to be seen. Wondering what they were up to, I went to the back room, only to find my husband and sister in the midst of an affair. What are you doing here? On the day of my daughter's funeral, to think they were engaging in such an act, my anger surged. I quietly entered the room and locked the door with both of their clothes in hand. Should I throw these clothes away? Driven by rage, I threw their clothes out of a nearby window. It was raining heavily outside. Even if the clothes were found, they'd be too soiled to wear. Serves you right. Thinking this, I called my parents and in-laws to the front of the room to expose what was happening. I gathered both my own and my in-laws' parents in front of the door, determined to publicly shame the two. My name is Candace, and I have a twin sister. My sister and I were close, always playing together from childhood, and we shared similar thoughts. However, my sister was more amiable and charming, often more popular in class. We have the same face. So why is there such a difference in how much we're liked? I wonder why. It's about whether you have charm or not. You're often quite unfriendly, aren't you? Like Dad. My sister said this, but was it really true? Indeed, I am not good at communication and struggle to talk to people, whereas my sister can chat easily with others. She smiles a lot, has a good demeanor, and indeed fits the type that would be popular. But I couldn't help feeling there was another reason why she was so liked. But you know what? You're actually liked more than me, Candace. What do you mean? I don't know, but that's what all the guys say when they break up with me. They say they prefer Candace. What's that supposed to mean? Indeed, my sister was popular. Initially liked by everyone, she quickly made friends and started relationships. But they never lasted long. At the end of each relationship, they would say they preferred me. Apparently due to my sister's bad personality. Why does Alyssa always have to play pranks like that? It's unfair to Candace. Apologize. As children, I was more adored by our grandparents, which seemed to upset her. And she would often make me cry by hitting or tripping me. As we entered middle school, my sister suddenly became popular. However, as boyfriends began to drift away, they would say, "I prefer Candace," and she would become jealous and complain every time. "Why do people like you even though you don't approach anyone? You're so gloomy, it's annoying." From this time, my sister started to see me as a rival and spoke to me less and less. Yet, she continued to make many boyfriends and flaunted herself. She looked down on me, saying she was prettier and had a bigger bust. Still, there was a time when I asked her for advice on confessions. In high school, I liked a classmate, Howard, and wondered how I might start a relationship with him. However, having been distant from boys until then, I didn't know what to do and reluctantly asked my sister for help. "I like Howard from our class, could you tell me how to approach him?" When I consulted her, my sister gave me an unfriendly look and dismissively said, "Figure it out yourself," and didn't offer any help. Maybe I chose the wrong person to ask for advice. What should I do now? Eventually, I never confessed my feelings in high school. And I thought that love had ended in unrequited affection. However, when I went to college, the person I had liked also attended the same university. And unexpectedly, we became close and naturally started dating. "Let's move in together." We were college students at the time. And I was so happy when he suggested it that I decided to move in with him. And we lived together until graduation. "Let's get married after we graduate from college." We promised that to each other, and 4 years later, I found out I was pregnant. Although we hadn't graduated yet, he proposed to me at that time. "I will continue to love you and the baby. Let's get married." 2 months after discovering the pregnancy, we got married on the day of our graduation ceremony. We continued to live in the same apartment where we had been living together. And a few months later, our child was born. However, soon after birth, the child was diagnosed with pediatric leukemia. And the doctors told us the child might not have long to live. She was just born. Isn't there anything we can do? There are treatments that can prolong life, but this disease has a high fatality rate. We will do our best. It might work out, so don't give up hope. That's what the doctor told me, and I hung on to hope for my child. There were times when it seemed hopeless as we couldn't find a donor. It might be difficult for her to live past 2 years. Yet, my daughter somehow managed to live another year and passed away at the age of 3. It was a premature death. But I convinced myself that it was the fate she was born with and bid her soul farewell. During my university days, my sister was working. Ever since Howard and I started living together in college, my sister began visiting our home frequently. "Long time no see, Howard. How have you been?" "Oh, I thought you were Candace." "It's been a long time, Alyssa." My sister always wore provocative clothes when she came to our apartment and tried to appeal to Howard. I hadn't been too concerned about her usual provocative attire. But she started wearing strong perfume every time she came, which made me suspicious of her intentions. "You always wear such provocative clothes, it's hard to know where to look, can you stop?" "Really, why do you always wear clothes like that?" "I can't help it, these are the only clothes I have, and I'm meeting my boyfriend after this." While saying this, my sister always flaunted her cleavage, wearing low-cut tops and short skirts, boldly sitting in front of Howard in a way that made him uncomfortable. Since middle school, I had disliked my sister's attitude and was vigilant, thinking she must be up to something, and I was determined to protect Howard. She's a bit too much. What does she want? At that time, Howard seemed indifferent to my sister's presence, which reassured me. However, I was wrong. Whether it was an act or not, I can't tell now. But Howard and my sister had started an affair around that time. A few months later, following the pregnancy, Howard proposed, and we got married soon after. I've decided to get married. My sister suddenly called to tell me that. Moreover, her partner was Ted, a friend who had been in the same baseball club as Howard. You're kidding, Alyssa is marrying Ted. Why? It was natural to be surprised since it was a marriage with a classmate. Moreover, this happened 6 months after we got married. Seeing how happy you looked, Candace, I thought I had to get married soon. I liked Ted from the baseball club, we were dating, and we just got married. I see, Alyssa liked Ted. At that moment, my husband's face seemed clouded. I didn't understand why he would be upset about my sister's marriage announcement. But that would become clear later. It's been a while since I last saw you, we haven't met since I got married. Really, when was the last time? I didn't expect to reunite like this. Now I'm your brother-in-law, so let's get along. Hey, you guys got married earlier than me, what about my position? Ryan had known us sisters and Ted since childhood and had met Howard in high school, becoming part of a close trio that often hung out together. Therefore, when these three reunited at my sister's wedding, they promised to hang out again, creating more opportunities for the three to meet. Consequently, my husband started going out frequently, often returning late at night, but always coming back smelling of perfume. Even though he was supposed to be out with friends, why do I smell perfume? This bothered me, so I confronted my husband. Howard, have you noticed a perfume smell recently? I sniffed his clothes and looked at him suspiciously, and he replied hastily. Ryan's been bringing his girlfriend around a lot recently, it's probably her perfume, isn't it? It smells like women's perfume, but it's a familiar scent, what is this smell? When I said that, my husband hurriedly left the room, quickly taking off his clothes. Who cares about the perfume smell, I'm going to take a shower. Saying that, my husband went to take a shower. From then on, I began to feel something suspicious was going on. Howard said he was going out to hang out with Ryan and Ted. But sometimes when I visit my parents' house, Ted is there, and Alyssa is often not around. Huh? Didn't Howard say he was going out to hang out with Ted and Ryan today? Why are you here at my parents' house? Huh? I haven't been told anything. And Alyssa isn't here either. What's that about? Isn't it suspicious? At that time, Ted and I began to suspect their behavior, and started taking action to get to the heart of the matter. One day, during my daughter's funeral, the two of them suddenly disappeared, and I went out looking for them. That day, Ted had an unavoidable business trip and couldn't attend the funeral. And despite the situation, Alyssa attended the funeral in provocative clothing. Why don't you have any decent clothes? It's a funeral. Why are you wearing a suit that looks like a tight dress? Take it off right now, I'll lend you something. It's fine, I don't have any other clothes, and I didn't buy any morning clothes. Just let it go for today. Alyssa forcefully overruled my mother's opinion, but my mother was appalled by her behavior. From a young age, my sister had shown signs of being unreasonable. But my mother had given up by now and said, do whatever you want. She then threw in the towel with Alyssa. At that moment, I was certain. The perfume Alyssa was wearing was the same scent that Howard carried after hanging out with Ryan. I thought, maybe these two were having an affair. That suspicion had now turned into a solid assumption. And during the funeral arrangements, they disappeared somewhere. I had a vague idea of where the two might have gone. Candace thought those two are definitely doing something where they can't be found. And they think they're not caught. I'll definitely find them and confront them. I went to the men's restroom and another back room on the second floor. But they were nowhere to be found. Where could they have gone? When I went back to our family's back room to start searching again, I heard suspicious sounds coming from inside. Hey, you know I'm more attractive and better, right? Really, you're the best. You have bigger breasts and a better body than Candace. So, let's go further. Why don't we have a child together? That would be bad, it will be found out. It'll be fine, Ted is easy to fool, and Candace is too stupid to notice this. I heard such a conversation through the door of the back room. What are those two thinking? They're the worst. It seemed like they were about to start something, as I could hear the sound of clothes being removed from inside. I listened closely to the sounds inside, and I heard Alyssa's voice saying, "Let's move deeper in since it would be bad if our voices were heard." After a while, intense noises came from inside. The two had begun to focus on their actions, unconcerned about the loud voices leaking out. Are they stupid? It's completely audible, and it's disgusting. I quietly opened the door and checked inside. The two were indeed at the back of the room. Unaware of my presence, they continued their loud interactions. Stop it already, it's my daughter's funeral. I muttered quietly, picked up the clothes they had discarded near the entrance, and quietly left the room. My anger was rising over their actions. So I threw their clothes out of a nearby window and locked the door. Dad, Mom, could you come to the front of the back room? I have something to talk about. I informed my parents and in-laws to come to the front of the back room. My revenge was about to begin. Our parents and in-laws gathered at the back room, and the voices of Alyssa and Howard could be heard through the door, freezing the atmosphere. What's that? Are Alyssa and Howard in there? What are they doing? Howard, what is he doing? Despite the commotion starting outside the back room, the two were so caught up that they didn't notice. The voices grew louder, echoing throughout the building. Disgusted, both my father and father-in-law quietly unlocked the door, and then burst it open on the count of 3. Whoa. That scared me. Huh? Huh? Startled by the loud noise of the door bursting open, Howard and Alyssa jumped up in surprise. Naturally, they were completely naked, leaving them without any excuse for their behavior. As they frantically searched for their missing clothes, they wrapped themselves in curtains to hide their bodies. What are you doing? At your own child's funeral, how could you do such a thing? Both fathers, having overheard what Howard and Alyssa were doing, were furious and began to shout at them. They pulled their son and daughter from behind the curtains and made them kneel down on the spot. You do realize what you've done, right? What is the meaning of this? Do you think this is acceptable? After scolding them, both fathers nodded to each other, opened the window of the back room, and physically removed Howard and Alyssa from the building while they were still naked. Don't disturb the funeral, we're limited on time here. And we can't spare time to lecture people like you. Stay here and reflect on your actions. You can't go outside naked. Exactly, the funeral is the priority right now, not you. Be prepared for a serious scolding once the funeral is over. Unfortunately, it had been raining since the morning. The weather forecast predicted continuous heavy rain throughout the day. This is no joke. Doing such a thing in such a downpour, it's the lowest of the low as a parent. Say whatever you want, but you're the ones who need to reflect. This is a good chance to cool your heads. Left outside, Alyssa and Howard were exposed to the rain, naked for the duration of the funeral. Since Howard, who was originally supposed to lead the funeral, was absent, I stepped in as the chief mourner, and the funeral concluded on time. By the time the clothes I had thrown out were found, they were completely soaked and ruined. As a result, Alyssa and Howard had to borrow clothes that relatives had brought as backups, and wore these on their return. But their ordeal was just beginning. Inside the car on the way home, there was silence. Alyssa and Howard, forced to sit together, continually kept their heads down in a gesture of remorse. However, my father, who was driving, seemed indifferent to their display and started a conversation with me. "Candace, once we get home, we should all gather and have a meeting about this matter, don't you think?" Throughout the funeral, I had been holding back my rage. Naturally, I agreed to his proposal, planning to confront Howard thoroughly. After this, the car fell silent again. The only sound was the rain beating on the car roof. Alyssa and Howard awkwardly kept their heads down, just waiting to get home. After a while, we arrived at our family home. Everyone got out of the car and headed inside. But Alyssa and Howard hesitated, not wanting to move. They looked utterly defeated, as if they had given up on everything. "Huh? This car?" I was startled to see a familiar car parked at the entrance. It was Ted's car. He was supposed to be on a business trip until tomorrow and not due back today. Yet there was his car parked outside. Why? As I entered the house with these thoughts, I found Ted and Ryan chatting in the living room.
"Ah,
"There you are. I've been waiting." Ted seemed to behave as if he knew what had happened at the funeral. "Ted, weren't you on a business trip until tomorrow?" "Actually, I never went on a business trip." Hearing this, Alyssa, who entered later, reacted dramatically. "What do you mean by that? Were you cheating on me?" It seemed like Alyssa was desperately trying to turn the situation around by accusing him. Everyone was appalled by her words, and Ted retorted, "Who are you to talk about cheating? You're the one cheating. Enough is enough. Shut up. Why did you lie about the business trip and not come today?" "I knew about you and Howard getting cozy at the funeral today because Ryan told me. So I lied about the business trip to create a situation that would make it easier for you to do your thing." Ted then signaled to Ryan, who had been fiddling with his smartphone. Ryan placed the phone on the table and played an audio recording. "How about we do something secret at the funeral, just between us?" "That's too bold, we'll get caught." "I just love thrilling situations, so let's just do it once." The unmistakable voices of the two coming from the smartphone left me and our parents speechless. We were shocked that Alyssa had such inclinations, and everyone was appalled. "Disgusting, what are you thinking?" "Alyssa, I had suspected you were cheating with Howard. Alyssa's been like this since middle school." "I know because I've been dealing with her since then. She's always been getting involved with various guys because she thinks she's cute. She enjoys thrilling situations and doing it in weird places. And she was always hated by everyone afterward. I've been hearing stories like this about her for a long time." As Ryan spoke, Ted stood up, approached Alyssa, pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, and thrust it forcefully at her chest. "We're getting a divorce. I've been gathering evidence with Ryan ever since I suspected your actions. To think you were just using me." Then Ted reached into his pocket again, pulled out another document, and handed it to me. "Candace, you should divorce him too. I'm disappointed in both of them. The more I investigated, the more faults I found. There's no love in them." The document he handed me was a real divorce application. I had been aware of Howard's infidelity, but I hadn't thought about divorce until then. Faced with the actual divorce papers, I felt mixed emotions. But as I thought about Alyssa and Howard's affair, my anger resurfaced. And the word divorce clearly formed in my mind. maybe divorce really is the best option. For someone who neglects their child for their own desires, they're not a parent at all. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I thought you were a good person at first. But I absolutely despise someone who doesn't love their child. I want a divorce. Like Ted, I slammed the divorce papers against my husband's chest and declared our divorce. Why? It was just a moment of weakness. It's not like it was a real affair. Stop making excuses. I have plenty of evidence, photos, audio, videos. You hurt Candace, who means a lot to me. You're no friend of mine. Ryan then threw photos of the two of them during their secret meetings onto the table in front of us. The photos were clearly dated, and upon closer inspection, the date was the same as when Howard had said he was going out with Ryan. As I looked at the photos, Ryan started playing a video, revealing that they had met in unbelievable places. What's most unbelievable is Alyssa's audacity. You boldly met up at home and didn't get caught. And you were even meeting at Howard's parents' house. Watching the video, it became clear that he was telling the truth. In that moment, instead of anger, I felt overwhelming disgust. I'm appalled. Alyssa has led you to do such things? Howard, what is wrong with you? Well, it turned out surprisingly okay when we tried it. You're the worst. In a moment of anger, I slapped my husband. He held his cheek in shock, and those around us were frozen, witnessing a real chaotic scene. Both my husband and my sister had shrunk in fear, rendered helpless by the situation. While we're at it, I'm going to say everything. Alyssa, you've always liked Howard, haven't you? I haven't forgotten how you came to me in high school, saying you liked Howard. That is. So, after Candace started dating Howard, you approached him, didn't you? You tried to take him from Candace. Stop it. Moreover, you used Ted, who you liked second best, as a tool. Dating and even marrying him. You were actually aiming for Howard. Stop it, I said. It's the truth, right? I heard it all from your friends. Enough already. Unable to endure Ryan's words any longer, my sister lunged at him to shut him up. But my brother-in-law restrained her. Let go, why do I have to be told all this? Don't mess with me. While being held back, my sister struggled. But our father appeared in front of her and slapped her cheek to calm her. Enough already, the things you are being blamed for are your own doing. But, about Howard. Just because you like someone, you think it's okay to take someone else's husband? That's what I'm saying is wrong. And Howard, why did you go along with Alyssa's approach? It's both your responsibilities, so make sure to sign the divorce papers. His words calmed the two down instantly. Previously resistant, they now sat down quietly, showing us expressions of regret. I'm truly sorry, it was all my fault, please don't go through with the divorce. I really do love Ted. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I was a fool to be swayed by Alyssa. I admit that. I will reflect on this. Please, let's not divorce, I truly love Candace. Impossible. Despite their earnest final words, our minds were unchanged. No matter what they said, our hearts wouldn't change, so my brother-in-law and I spoke in unison. Afterward, feeling they could not reverse the decision on the divorce, they signed the divorce papers. The parents around us felt a sense of resolution. And the atmosphere shifted as if to suggest having coffee. However, one person was still not appeased. Ryan. Don't think you can leave things like this, I will expose everything you have done right here. His eyes were demonic. Showing a fury worse than mine or my brother-in-law's, he intimidated the two. What's it to you, why do you have to be so angry? I'm the one who's been the most manipulated here, especially by you. Alyssa, and Howard. You two always came to me with your love problems. Claiming your affections for each other, then going off and making misguided marriages. Causing such chaos. What was all my patience for, then? Ridiculous. Ryan, what are you saying? These two have been in love with each other from the start, and despite my advice, they showed no signs of getting together, and then Howard ends up marrying Candace. That can't be true. Why? Why has it come to this? At Ryan's revelation, the two shrank even further. Mentioning things from middle school made them feel embarrassed. Shut up, I was innocent back then, I didn't have the guts to confess. Same here, I was popular but I never confessed to anyone myself. I couldn't confess to the person I really liked. Contrary to their previous expressions, their faces were so red. They might have been painted with red paint. Being talked about their past must have been unbearably embarrassing. Why would you bring up such a topic here? The divorce is already decided, isn't it okay? It's the worst to suddenly be talked about in such an embarrassing way. It's a big deal for me. If it's embarrassing, then it's just right, let's shame you here. Ryan's anger was so heated that no one could stop him. Both sets of parents were just listening dumbfounded, with no gesture of intervention. Also, since Candace and Howard got married, Alyssa has been going to Candace's house frequently, but you secretly met Howard then, didn't you? Huh? You're lying, from that time? Here, this is the proof. Why do you have this photo from that time? It was a coincidence, around the time of their wedding. But anyone would suspect something seeing them walking hand in hand through the hotel district. Shown this photo, my husband looked at me with a panicked expression. He had made me think that he was just led astray by Alyssa. But his face suddenly stiffened with the shock of the ambush. What do you mean? Are you saying you were cheating since then? No, I mean, the fact that you're flustered says it all. I thought the anger had subsided a bit with the divorce being finalized. But with this unexpected information, my anger surged again. And I slammed my hand down in front of my husband to intimidate him. Sorry, it was a momentary lapse. I've liked Alyssa since the past, but I couldn't confess. So I gave up and started dating Candace. Still, I couldn't completely give up. And when Alyssa approached me, I was still unsettled. So you just followed along. You settled for me and dated me. Ridiculous. I truly loved Howard back then. I was so frustrated that tears came out. Knowing that he dated me because he couldn't date my sister and had settled. I realized there was absolutely no sympathy to be had for these two at this moment. But the frustration kept building inside me, and naturally, tears started streaming from the corners of my eyes. Ridiculous, so I was just being used by both of you. Why did you make me have a child? Give me back my child's life, it's all your fault, idiot. I broke down crying on the spot. Feeling used by my sister and husband filled me with a sense of deep disappointment. Ryan comforted me, holding me and saying, "It's okay, now." While wiping my tears, he consoled me. I feel the same as you, Candace, like I was used by them. I don't want to see your faces anymore, get out of here. Hearing his words, I glared at my husband and voiced my feelings as loudly as I could. I will never forgive you, I'll sue you for compensation, so be prepared. My husband, intimidated by my sharp gaze, muttered quietly, "Sorry." With those words, the air in the room turned heavy. And the parents who had witnessed everything looked at the two with disapproval. The two of them, just being there, were overwhelmed by pressure and shame. Unable to stand it any longer, they quickly grabbed their belongings and rushed out of the house. Later, my sister contacted me to apologize, saying, I'm truly sorry, but our parents did not forgive her and she was driven out of the house. And Howard also called his in-laws, but they wouldn't listen and he too was eventually driven out. The two, having nowhere to turn, had rushed into marriage based on past feelings. But once married, apparently their personalities clashed and after a big fight, they divorced, as I heard from a friend. Serves them right, that's what you get for using someone to get married. Really, serves them right. Candace and I were victims too, but Ted, you were the most pitiable. Being used by Alyssa for marriage, especially since you were her second choice. Stop, that's the hardest part to bear. Sorry. Howard cut off ties with his friends and no longer contacted the two. And instead, I became close with them. Then, one day at a drinking party, Ryan gave me a ring. Actually, I've liked Candace for a long time. I wanted to confess, but couldn't. And after you started dating Howard, I supported you from the shadows. But now I can say it. I want to date you, I will never be like Howard. You're late. I sort of knew, thank you. Huh? I felt it when you protected me. I knew you liked me. Ryan blushed slightly and nodded. I smiled back at him, and Ryan slipped the ring on my finger, saying, "Marriage is in the future, this ring is like a promise ring for that vow. So take care of it, I will definitely propose." 3 years later, Ryan and I were engaged, and he proposed properly, leading to our marriage. Ted, inspired by us, found a new partner and they also got married. Now happily going out together as a couple. And when I sued my ex-husband Howard for emotional distress, the claim was accepted, and I received a small amount of compensation. Good for you, even if it's a little, you got some compensation. Really, including the child, I suffered a lot of emotional damage, naturally. After our marriage, Ryan declared he would live with my family. And indeed we lived happily with my parents. Reflecting now, I can't imagine that my ex-husband could have lived this close with my parents. And I feel glad I married Ryan.